Good day, learners. Welcome to Technical Mathematics lesson. My name is Matule Latakomu. This lesson is brought to you by Sci-Bono Discovery Center in collaboration with Gauteng Department of Education. Grade 11s, today we are going to look at our revision. Remember, we are about to write our final examination. So we are going to look into the equations and inequalities. So now let's look at our lesson objectives. At the end of this lesson, learners must be able to use quadratic formula to solve equations, solve your inequalities, and simplify logarithms and solve equations involving logarithms. So those are the things that we must achieve at the end of this lesson, our objectives. So now we're looking at the equations where you have to solve for x. Now we have different types of or the different setup of equations. So this is one of the questions on how they can be asking you in the examination. And now we are looking at activity number 1. Looking at activity number 1, we have 1.1. We are given the equation there, but our equation is equated to p. We have x squared minus x minus 12 is equal to p. Then the question says we must solve for x. Correct, that is an instruction. We must solve for x. And looking at 1.1.1, 1.1.2, and 1.1.3, there are conditions of our p. Correct? Looking at 1.1, they're saying p is equal to 0. And looking at 1.1.2, they are saying p is less than or equal to 0. And looking at 1.1.3, it says p is equal to -5. And then now they are telling you that we must correct to 2 decimal place. It means your answer, you have to correct it to 2 decimal place. Then now let's look at how do we now approach this type of questions. Now remember, with the first one, 1.1.1, p is a condition. They are giving you a condition of p to say if you have x squared minus x minus 12, it's equal to, but we know that this is equated to p. Now the value of p, they are saying it's 0. So now if you have x squared minus x squared minus x minus 12, it's equal to, now instead of writing p, I will write 0. I will substitute my p with 0 because it is given there as a condition to say p is equal to 0. Now looking at our equation there, it's in a form of ax squared plus bx plus c is equal to 0. And of which, when it's like that, we say it's in the standard form. So now we can either use 2 methods of solving this quadratic equation. We can either factorize or we can use what we call a quadratic formula. And our quadratic formula, remember, it is given in the formula sheet. So now here we can simply use the quadratic formula because it's more convenient and it will assist you to answer these questions very fast and accumulate full marks. So now we can see that we need to identify the value of a, we need to identify the value of b, and we also need to identify the value of c. So in this case, a is a leading coefficient, correct? And the coefficient of x squared. So our a here is going to be 1. Then our b is going to be -1. Remember, you take it with the sign. The coefficient of x is -1. and the constant c is negative 12, correct? Then you will go to your formula sheet and we look for a formula that is written like this. It's your x is equal to minus b plus minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. That's what we call a quadratic formula. Then you will also substitute. Remember, when you substitute all the time, you must substitute inside the bracket. Don't forget to put the square. That is one of the mistakes that learners do or commit when they are using quadratic formula. They forget to write a square. Even when they punch in a calculator, they forget to put that square in your calculator. So you have to be careful with that. So you have AC all over 2A. So in this case, we are going to have two values of x. You're gonna x is equal to, or x is equal to. So now, when we substitute there, our b we know that is negative 1, and then b is also negative 1, but we know that our a is positive 1 and our c is negative 12. And then over 2a, our a is 1. So we need to be careful when we substitute inside our calculator, and also know how to use your calculator in punching the quadratic formula. So we're looking at negative 1 into, negative into negative 1 plus the square root of negative 1 squared minus 4 into 1 and negative 12 all over 2 into negative 1. So you will realize that your first answer, it will be negative 4. Remember, with quadratic formula, you will firstly substitute the positive sign in front of the square root. Then you punch it in a calculator. Then when you get your answer as negative 4, you will now go and substitute, replace that positive with now a negative in front of your quadratic formula. You will go delete your positive and put negative. And as you put negative, your answer there is going to be 3. So now the equation there is solved. Your roots, we are having x is equal to negative 4 or x is equal to 3. Then you will get your 2 marks. So you will get your 2 marks there. And they will tell you that those marks there, they have to be accurate because this is your basic. So now we're looking at the second question. Now it says P is less than or equal to 0 and for 1 mark. So now, remember from our previous question, we already have what we call the critical values. We already have what we call the critical values. So in this case, it means if you have x squared minus x minus 12 less than or equal to 0, then your critical values, because that's what we need to calculate, your critical values is x is equal to negative 4 or x is equal to 3. Those are your critical values, correct? Then from there, you have to now write your answer in an inequality form. And how do we then write our answer in an inequality form? We are going to see, you will have your number line. The smallest number will go to the left, which is negative 4. And the bigger number will go to the right, which is 3. Remember, negative 4 is smaller than positive 3. Then in front of, between those values on your number line, just put x, correct? Then the trick and the technique that we apply here to write your answer in an inequality form, we are saying, firstly, you must make sure that your leading coefficient is always positive. Your leading coefficient is always positive. We can see that we have positive 1 then. If our leading coefficient is positive, then we are going to take the sign of an inequality, the sign of that an inequality. Then what do we do with that sign? We are going to substitute it between -4 and x, and between x and -3. This is the basic problem on how to solve inequalities. So the technique that you need to understand is that the leading coefficient have to be positive. If the leading coefficient is positive, then you will take the sign of an inequality, you will take that inequality sign and you put it between -4 and x, and also x and -3. So that's how you solve this inequality in a simplest way. Correct? So now we move forward to 1.1.3. In 1.1.3, they are saying our p is -5. So what is it that we need to do here? We need to now write our equation, x squared minus x minus 12 is equal to, now p is -5. We substitute -5 there. Then now we can't solve this equation when it's not equated to 0. Remember, all the time the equation needs to be equated to 0. Then how are we going to equate it to 0? We are going to say you transpose this -5 to the left hand side. As you transpose it, you are going to have x squared minus x minus 12 plus 5 is equal to 0. Then now you can add your like terms. We have x squared minus x. Then if you say -12 plus 5, you are going to get -7 is equal to 0. So another technique, or the hint, is that if it is given that correct to 2 decimal place, it means we can factorize this equation. There are no factors of 7 that can give us 1. We can factorize this equation. So if we can factorize this equation, then the least that we can do is to use our quadratic formula. Then you will now identify what is your A, what is your B, and what is your C. Then you can be able to use your quadratic formula. So A is 1, B is -1, and C is -7. So now you're gonna substitute in our quadratic formula. Remember, it's -b plus minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Then now, this quadratic formula, another thing that we must focus on grade 11s, is that the square root have to cover everything underneath. And also the division sign, it has to cover everything in the numerator. Because we are facing a problem of learners writing their square root and division sign, division line like this. They will write the division line like this and the square root like that. So this is an incorrect way of writing the quadratic formula. So when you write it, your square root must cover everything underneath, and also your division line must cover everything like that. Then that's how you write the quadratic, you rewrite the quadratic formula correctly. So that is the mistake that we need to to avoid. Grade 11. Then now, what are we going to do now? We are going to substitute. As we substitute, we are starting with B. Remember, we have -1, -1. Then we have 1 and -7 all over 1. Then we know that when it's like that, we can have our two x values. Remember, they said you must correct to 2 decimal place, and also you must understand how to round off, or you must know how to round off. Correct? So now, if we are to punch this in a calculator, we are going to have negative into negative 1 plus the square root of negative 1 squared minus 4 into negative 1, and now we are going to have minus 7. Then you will get our answer as 3,20, correct? Or 3,19. Let's leave it as 3,19. 3,19. And then if we were to change that sign there, we are going to get negative 2,19. So those are the two x values. So now let's look into this one here and double check it correctly. Let's double check this one correctly. The values there, it's actually and negative 3. It's actually positive 4 and negative 3. Yes, it's actually positive 4 and negative 3. Let's correct that one. It's positive 4 and negative 3. Positive 4 and negative 3. So we are going to also fix it this side. We are going to have negative 3 and positive 4. Negative 3 and positive 4. So we have positive 4 there and negative 3. So please correct that one. Remember, when you punch your calculator, you must also check the signs properly. So when I'm double checking, it's negative 3 and positive 4. But the concept is the same. The concept is the same. Remember, it's the leading coefficient needs to be positive, and if it's positive, then you will take that inequality sign and you put it between the x and negative 3 and x, and also x and positive 4. So please correct that one. Then now, looking at this one, we have substituted our quadratic formula correctly. Then we are getting 3,19 or negative 2,19. Those are the values of x. So now, moving forward, we are having 1.2. And in 1.2, it says given 2y minus x is equal to 7, and x squared minus xy is equal to 21 minus y squared. Correct? We have two equations there. So we'll say this one now, it's your equation 1, and this one, it's equation 2. You have two equations there. Then now, looking at 1.2.1, 1.2.1, they're saying you must make x the subject of the formula, the subject of the equation, 2y minus x is equal to 7 for 1 mark. So if you have 2y minus x is equal to 7, you can now make x the subject of the formula in a simplest way. Remember, x needs to be positive. So we can simply say, okay, if I were to take this positive 7 and transpose it to the left hand side, and x and transpose it to the right hand side, I will have 2y minus 7 is equal to x. Correct? Or someone can say, write it like this. It's still the same thing. It is still the same thing. Correct? So now that is how you make x the subject of the formula. Then since we had equation 1 and equation 2, this one now we're going to call it an equation 3. Now the 1.2.2 is our next question there. Then it says, hence or otherwise, solve for x and y. Remember, when the question starts by saying hence or otherwise, it means you must now go to the previous question and then use that answer in determining the current question. Correct? So now we are looking at 1.2.2. Then what is going to happen there? We know already that equation 3 is x is equal to 2y minus 7. What does it mean? It means that in equation 2, where we see x, we're going to substitute 2y minus 7. So now equation 2 is x squared plus xy it's equal to 21 minus y squared. Then if we were to substitute our x there, then we are going to have something like that. Then what is it that we need to do here to substitute? You substitute 2y minus 7, then you also have 2y minus 7. Then the correct substitution, it has a mark. Correct substitution, it has a mark, and also making x the subject of the formula, it has a mark. So already by looking at this, it means you have 2 marks. Then what will happen now? It means we are now going to say, okay, what do I do now? Remember, I have to make y the subject of the formula. I have to solve for y. How do I solve for y? Squared means you have 2 brackets that are the same. Then now, with this one, we can simply multiply inside the bracket by y. Then you are going to get plus 2y squared minus 7y is equal to 21 minus y squared. So now we can now look into our 2 brackets there. And how do we now expand those brackets? You know that we're going to use what we call your distributive property, or you can say FOIL method. You say 2y multiplied by 2y, 2y multiplied by negative 7 multiplied by 2y, and 2y multiplied by negative 7. That's how you will remove those brackets. So now let's look at how do we remove those brackets. So if you say 2y multiplied by 2y, you are simply going to have 4y squared. Then if you say 2y multiplied by negative 7, you are going to have negative 14y, also negative 14y plus. Now looking at that, remember is 2y multiplied by negative 7 from the top, you have negative 14y, and from the bottom is negative 7 multiplied by 2y is also negative 14y, and negative multiplied by negative, we know that it's positive, and 7 multiplied by 7 is 49. It means we are going to have plus 49 plus 2y squared minus 7y is equal to 21 minus y squared. So we rewrite everything the way it is there. Then from there, what do we do now? We now add the like terms. or before we saying add the like terms, now let's now transpose everything from this side to the right hand side, to the left hand side. So what do we do there? We're going to have 4y squared minus, if you add negative 14, and negative 7, you are going to say negative 14 minus 14 and minus 7. We are actually getting negative 35y. Remember, we just added these like terms here, correct? And then we say plus 2y squared plus 49. Now we have plus y squared minus 21 is equal to 0. So now we check. We have y squared here, we have y squared here, and we have y squared here. Then if you add 4 plus 2 is 6 plus 1 is 7. We're going to have 7y squared. Then now we are negative 35y. Remember, we got from negative 14y, and negative 7y. Then we are going to get negative 35y. Then now we are only left with what? We are only left with 49 minus 29. If you say 49 minus 21, you are now getting plus 28. It's equal to 0. So now that's where you get another mark there. Then what do we do from here? We say, okay, I'm having A, B, and C. I can use quadratic formula there. And this quadratic formula, it's in terms of y. Remember, you can't always solve it in terms of x. Also, when it's in terms of y, you can still solve it. Then how do we deal with that one? We are going to say, okay, y, because we are solving for y, not x, we are going to say y is equal to, now we have our quadratic formula. Now we have our quadratic formula. And in that quadratic formula, we substitute. Our b is negative 35. B, negative 35. A, 7. C, 28. A, 7. Then y is going to be equal to, or y is going to be equal to. Then, now you will punch it in your calculator and you get the y values. So you have negative 35, correct? We punch it nicely in your quadratic formula, negative 35 squared. Then you will have minus 4 into 7, because that is the value of A. Then you also have 28. Then you will have 2 into 7. So the first one is going to be 4. Then you go and change the sign from positive to negative. Then you get 1. Remember, the sign you start with positive, then you come with negative on the quadratic formula. Then your y is 4 and 1. Correct? So if you have 4 and 1 there, then you will say sub y into equation number 3. If you go to equation number 3, it's x is equal to 2y minus 7. Remember, the question says we must solve for x and y. We have solved for y. Now we need to solve for x. So it's going to be x is equal to 2, where there is y, we open the bracket, minus 7. Or you will have another one as x is equal to 2, open bracket, minus 7. So you will get the two values there. Now, what are we going to substitute? We are going to substitute 4 and 1. So if you say 2 times 4, you get 8, minus 7, you get 1. Then if you say 2 times 1, you get 2, minus 7, you get minus 5. 2 minus 7, you get minus 5. So that's how you solve for your x and y values for 5 marks. So remember now, you are going to get the mark in this way. Remember, we see the substitution. It has a mark which is 1. Then we also had another mark 2. Then we have 3 for using the quadratic or factors. Then you have 4 for both y values and 5 for both x values. So that's how we solve that quadratic, the x and y simultaneously. That's how we solve x and y simultaneously for 5 marks. So now let's look at activity number 2. In activity number 2, good people, it's another way of asking questions of solve for x in question 1, paper 1. Correct? Now, it's solve for x. Now, the style is different, but we use the same technique and the same methods of answering this type of questions. So now, without any waste of time, let's look at question 2.1.1. In 2.1.1, we are having open bracket 7 minus 3x close bracket, and in another bracket is negative 8 minus x is equal to 0. So here, for the fact that this is equal to 0 and those brackets are already factorized, they are already factorized, and the equation or those brackets are equated to 0. Then we use what we call zero factor rule. There is no need for us to expand. There is no need for us to expand. We use zero factor rule, and how do we apply it? We are going to say 7 minus 3x is equal to 0, or a minus 8 minus x is equal to 0. You equate what is inside the bracket to 0. Then that's how you apply the zero factor rule. Then from there you can make x the subject of the formula. You can have negative 3x is equal to negative 7 by transposing this 7 that side and also transposing that 8 that side. You're going to have negative x is equal to 8. Then here you will divide by negative 3 and divide by negative 3. Automatically your x will be 7 over 3. Then if you divide here by negative 1, because you want to remove the negative, then x is going to be negative 8. So that's how you can solve for x without expanding and stressing about multiplying of those two brackets. We can use zero factor rule. And then it's 2 marks. Those marks, normally they will say they are accurate. Correct? Now, moving forward now to 2.1.2. 2.1.2, they're saying 3x squared minus 4x is equal to 1 over 3. And correct to 2 decimal place. You mean your answer must be corrected to 2 decimal place. So, now, grade 11, we have 1 over 3 there. Don't be scared of a fraction. You can still work with fractions, because by putting the fraction there in that question is just to see if these grade 11 learners, they know what they must be doing. But the minute we put a fraction, you start being scared. How am I going to deal with a fraction? It's as easy as A, B, and C. So now let's look at how can we now solve this one. Remember, it's a quadratic equation, and it needs to be in a form of ax squared plus bx plus c is equal to 0. So it means we will transpose that 1 over 3 to the left hand side. Then we are going to have 3x squared minus 4x minus 1 over 3 is equal to 0. Then now we have a standard form of a quadratic equation. Then now we identify our value of a is 3, value of b is negative 4, and value of c is negative 1 over 3. Then with all being said, we know that we are going to use our quadratic formula, since they indicated to us there by giving us a hint that you correct your answer to 2 decimal places. It means we can factorize this type of equation. What do we do now? We go and rewrite our quadratic formula. We rewrite our quadratic formula. So x is going to be equal to, or x is going to be equal to. Then what do we do now? We substitute. What is our b? Negative 4. B, negative 4. A, 3. C, negative 1 over 3. And A is 3. Then you go to your calculator. You punch your quadratic formula correctly. Then you substitute there. We said b is negative 4. Your b is negative 4. Then your b squared is negative 4 squared. Then your a is going to be 3. Your a is going to be 3. And now your c is going to be negative 1 over 3. C, remember we saying is negative 1 over 3, and a is 3. So in this case, we are going to have 1 comma 4 1. Then we're going to change our sign there. If we put negative, then we are getting negative 0 comma 0.8. Correct? So that's how we solve that quadratic question. Solve for x. So now your marks, 1 mark is to rewrite it in a standard form. The second mark is for the substitution in the correct formula. Then you also got the 2 marks. Remember, you must round off to 2 decimal place, which is amounting to 4 marks. So it's as simple as ABC. You just need to understand how to solve your equations using quadratic formula, because it's the simple and quicker way of collecting marks in your exams. Okay, now let's move forward. This is an inequality question. Remember the technique that I spoke about in the first question, activity 1. I said you must also make sure that your leading coefficient there is positive. So now the first thing that we are going to do before we can calculate the critical values is to make sure that our leading coefficient is positive. So by doing that, you just basically divide everything by 1. So we're going to have positive x squared minus 16. Positive x squared minus 16. Then the inequality sign, the minute you divide by negative, the inequality sign changes. Now it's greater than, then it will be less than 0. Then now we can now solve our critical values. Solving our critical values, we have x squared minus 16 is equal to 0. I'm saying it's equal to 0 because I'm solving for critical values. So there are two ways of dealing with this as well. You can see that 16 is a perfect square, then we can use different of two squares. Or we can simply say x squared is equal to positive 16, then we introduce the square root. It's going to be x squared is equal to plus minus 4. It means x is equal to 4 or x is equal to minus 4. There are two ways of solving that. Some can say, I'm going to solve it using different of two squares, of which it's okay. Correct? Now, we are having our critical values. We can now go to our number line. We have negative 4 and we have 4. Remember, I said you must put x between. Then now, what then happens is that, do I have an equation where the leading coefficient is equal to, is positive? Yes. Then if the leading coefficient is positive, then we are going to take this sign and put it between negative 4 and x and negative 4. And that's how you solve that problem. It's as easy as A, B, and C. Okay, moving forward now, we're looking into our simultaneous equations. We have dealt with the simultaneous equation in a previous question. Now we are dealing with the simultaneous equation again. It's as easy as ABC. We know now that here we have equation 1 and also here we have equation 2. And for us to solve this, now we need to take one equation and make either x or y the subject of the formula. In this case, I can say from equation number 1, we have x minus y is equal to 1. Then if I take this negative y to the right hand side, my x is going to be 1 plus y. Then I can say that it's equation number 3. Correct? And then it means where I see x, I will substitute 1 plus y. So we're going to say substitute equation 3 into equation 1. In equation 2, sorry. Not equation 1, equation 2. So we're going to have now, here we have x plus 2y, plus 2xy plus 2xy plus y squared is equal to 0. Not 0 plus 9 is equal to 9. Then from there, we substitute x. It means where we see x, now we're going to put what? 1 plus y. Then this one, I can write it like this. It's still the same thing. Can write it like that. Then from there, we know that you're going to have y, 1 plus y, then 2y will multiply inside the bracket. We are going to have plus 2y plus 2y squared plus y squared is equal to 9. Then we can simply transpose this 9 to the left hand side. Then we start putting it in the descending order of x. We start with the x squared. If I add them, I'm going to have 3y squared. Then you go to the y, which is this one, and that one, which is plus 3y. Plus 3y. Correct? Then from there, you are going to see plus 1 minus 9 is equal to 0. Then we're going to have 3y squared plus 3y minus 8 is equal to 0. So you need to be also careful of how to remove the bracket and multiplication and something like that. You need to be careful of that, because that's where now most of the learners do make mistakes. So here the marks are going to be as follows: 1 mark for substitution, 1 mark for making x the subject of the formula, and 1 mark for you to simplify like that. Then we can say we have A, B, and C. Then in that case, we know that we are going to use our magic formula, quadratic formula. So now we are solving for y minus b plus minus b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. So now let's see, what do we get there? We have 3 into 3, then we also have 3 there, then we have minus 8, which is C, and your A is 3. So in this case now, you're gonna have 3, 3, 3, and negative 8, and also 3. That's how we are working with that one there. Also remember that when we substituted x here and there, we multiplied correctly there. Correct? Then now, what is it that we are dealing with? We're saying the first answer there of y is going to be 1,21, or y is equal to, you change the sign from positive to negative, then we are going to get negative 2,21. Then we sub y into equation 3, where you have x is equal to 1 plus y, or x is equal to 1 plus y. Then if we substitute your y as 1 plus 2y, x is going to be 2,21. Then if we substitute negative 2,21, then the answer here is going to be negative 1,21. So that's how we solve for your x and y simultaneously. That's how you basically solve for your x and y simultaneously. Correct? It's as easy as A, B, and C. So now we move forward to activity 3. Remember, activity 3 is the same as what we have done in our activity 1. Activity 3 is basically what we have done in activity 1. So this one we are just going to cruise nicely, because we already understand what is it that needs to be done. And look at the marks allocation there. Already you are talking about 5, 2 plus 3 is 5, plus 3 is 8, plus 6. We are talking about plus minus 14 marks only when you answer this type of a question. We're talking about plus minus 14 marks. So now, how do we now accumulate our 14 marks? Let's look at the first one. The first one, remember, we said if the condition says f of x is equal to 0, we're going to have 0 is equal to x squared minus 3x minus 10. Without any waste of time, we are going to use our quadratic formula. Remember, you can still factorize, but it's easier when we use our quadratic formula, because it's also very quick for us to answer. So now, when we substitute there, we're going to have negative 3, 1, negative 10, and 1. So x is going to be equal to, or x is going to be equal to. So if now we go to our quadratic formula, and now we substitute negative 3 and negative 3, then our a is going to be 1, then our c is going to be negative 10, all divided by 2 into 1. Then you get negative 2. Then when you change the sign now, we are getting 5. So the answers there is negative 2 and 5. Remember I said if also you want to factorize, you can do that. You will simply say x and x. Then the factors of 10 that can give you 3 is 2 and 5, or is 5 and 2. Then from there you see the middle term is negative. It means the bigger number will say negative, the smaller number will say positive. Then that's how you factorize, but it's simple when you use your quadratic formula. 1 mark here, 1 mark here, 2 marks. Then we go to this one. Remember they're saying now f of x, which is x squared minus 3x minus 10 is now less than 0. That is the condition here, and says represent your solution on a number line. But we know that from the previous question we have calculated our critical values. Critical values is 2 and negative 2 and 5. So we know that x is equal to negative 2, or x is equal to 5. That's what we have solved from the previous question. Then from there we can now draw our number line there, which is negative 2 and 5. Remember I said in the middle there you must put x. Then what are you going to do here? You are going to say, okay, the leading coefficient is positive, then I will take that sign and I put them there. This is how you solve your inequality question. But they said we must now put it on the number line. Remember, this it says x is greater than negative 2, and x is less than 5. So it means, representing it graphically, you are going to write it like that. One will ask, why do I leave my circle open there? Is because the inequality sign here, it doesn't say less than or equal to, it just say less than. So it means negative 2 and 5 are not included in that number line. Correct? Negative 2 and 5 are not included. So that's how we solve that, and we represent it on a number line. So now we have 3.2, you solve for x. Remember I said the minute they're saying correct to 2 decimal place, it means you must use your quadratic formula directly. Then now we are going to have 2x squared minus 11 is equal to 7x. One thing you need to know is that you can't solve it when it's not in the standard form. When we say it's in a standard form, it must be equal to 0. Then we're going to take this 7x and we transpose it. Then you must rewrite it now in the descending order of x. So descending order of x, which is going to be 2x squared minus 7x minus 11 is equal to 0. That's how it should be written. Ax squared plus bx plus c. So now, we now know when we are at this stage, we use now our quadratic formula. So that's basically what you will be doing. And you can see that I've been using quadratic formula all along, and it's convenient, and you are collecting marks easily there, grade 11s. So now, let's now substitute. We're going to have negative 7, 2, negative 11, and 2. Then x is equal to, or x is equal to. Then now, when we substitute the -7, and we also substitute -7, then the a there is 2. Then we also have -11 divided by your a is 2. Then now we are going to have 4,68. Then we go and change from positive to negative. Then we get -1,78. So this is how you solve for your quadratic. Now 3 marks, they will still give you 1 mark for standard form, and they say 1 mark for factors and 1 mark for both x values. Sometimes they give it as 3 marks, sometimes they give it as 4 marks, but the method is the same. So moving forward, we now have another question of simultaneous. We have to solve for x and y. Basic things, they doesn't need you to sweat. So in this case, we can do as follows. We can say, okay, looking at the first equation and the second equation, we can say y it's equal to x minus 1. Then we have equation 3 that we can make y the subject of the formula. So if now you say sub y oh, plus. Okay, yeah. No, sorry. Why are they saying plus 7? Why is saying 7 is positive? Oh, the question says negative. Yes. Thank you for that one. Let's fix it. Our 7 is positive. Let's fix it. Thank you for that one. There is negative. The minute you transpose it, then it becomes positive. It becomes positive. Yeah, thanks for that one. I omitted negative. Correct? So now let's now double check it again. Our answers, we are having positive 7, not negative 7. It's positive 7. Of which our answers now is going to be 1,18, and the other one is going to be negative 4,68. Yes, it swapped the answers as positive from positive to negative, negative to positive. Thanks for that one. So now we're moving forward. We were talking about our simultaneous equation, and now how do we then solve there? Remember, we identified our equation number 1 and equation number 2, correct? Then now we said we need to substitute equation number 3 into equation number 2. Remember, equation number 3 came from equation number 1. So where we see y, we're going to put x negative 1. So now here we are having y plus 7 is equal to x squared plus 2x. So now where there is y, we're going to put what? I'm going to put x minus 1 plus 7 is equal to x squared plus 2x. Correct substitution, 1 mark. Making y the subject of the formula, 1 mark. Then we are having x minus 1 plus 7 is equal to x squared plus 2x. Remember, we just throughout the bracket because there is nothing that is multiplying those brackets, correct? It's actually a ghost one outside there, correct? So now we are going to transpose everything from this side to that side. So we are going to have 0 is equal to x squared plus 2x negative x because it's positive on the other side. So we can say negative 1 plus 7 is going to be plus 6. Then when we transpose it, it's going to be negative 6. Then 0 is going to be equal to x squared plus x minus 6. Correct? Then from there we are going to have A, B, and C. Then we do what? We use our quadratic formula. Remember, the third mark is there. Easy marks. Now, moving forward, we are going to use our quadratic formula. We're saying it's a magic formula because it's easy to use and we are not going to lose marks as long as you are very careful in substituting those values. Now our A is 1, our B is 1, our C is negative 6. So let's substitute them. It says A is 1, B is 1, B is 1, A is 1, C is negative 6, and A is 1. So when you go and punch them in your calculator, let's see what do we get. So your B is 1 and your A is also 1. And then your C is negative 6. So let's see, we are having 2. Then when we change the sign there, we are going to get negative 3. So now remember, we accumulated 1, 2, 3 marks. Then now we're having 4 and 5. But we are not done because here they said we must solve for x and y. So we're going to say substitute x into equation 3 for you to get y. Remember y, it was equal to x minus 1. X minus 1 or y is equal to x minus 1. So you are going to have, you substitute 2 minus 1, which is going to give you 1. And then this side, we substitute negative 3, negative 1, which is going to give you negative 4. Then you get mark number 6. So that's how we solve your simultaneous. Easy as A, B, and C. And that's where grade 11s you accumulate a lot of marks. Okay. Now, let's move forward. We're now entering into the laws of logarithms. So the laws of logarithms, remember there are many, there are more than 3, but let's look at the first 3. So now the first one we are saying, if we have a log of base A, x and y are just numbers of the log, they can be any numbers. When you multiply them, you can expand these logarithms and write it as log base A of x plus log base A of y. And then we can also work it vice versa. Where they give you as an expanded log, then you need to reduce it. So we can work it from left to right and right to left. So multiplication goes hand in hand with division. Then now, the division law, it says, the minute I have a log base A of x over y, it's equal to now. Division goes hand in hand with subtraction. You can see that as I'm expanding it, then we are subtracting there. Correct? Then the power law, it says, if I have a log of base A of x to the power of n, for me to make n this, maybe I want to solve for n, then I can now multiply it there by the coefficient. Then it's going to be like that. And hence I said they can go vice versa. You can go forward and you can also go backward. Let's look at the other golden rules of logs. We know that if we have a log of maybe 10, the base is not given. We always know that the base is 10. And then this one is going to be 1. Remember, if you are given an expression with a log and they don't give you the base, you always assume that the base is 1. I mean, the base is 10. You always assume that the base is 10 when the base is not given. That is number 1. Number 2, we know that if you have a log of any number plus 1, the log of any number and the number there is 1, you must know that the log there, it will be equal to 0. Then another thing that you need to know is that when the log of a base and a number, when they are the same, the base and the number of a log that are the same, then you have something like this. When the base and the number are the same, then you have 1. Those are the basic laws of logarithms that you need to know. And let's now move forward. Remember, now we are looking to the logarithms. They are carrying a lot of marks as well, and we also need to know how to work with them. Correct? So now, let's move forward. So in this case now, for 4 marks, they say we must solve or simplify. And normally they will say without the use of a calculator. Without the use of a calculator. So now, what is it that we are going to do here? We are going to say, okay, I have the log of 32, log base 32 of 8. Log base 32 of 8 plus log of 10. Now, remember I said if the base is not given, you can assume that the base is 10. Then how do I then solve this one? This one, guys, is the same as saying log of 8 all over log of 32 plus log base 10 of 10. This is one way of writing that log in a form of that. Why? Because now the base, it won't speak to our number there. Remember, most of the time they will give you something like log base 2 of 8. You know that in that case you can write it as log base 2 of 2 to the power of 3. Then that's basically how you can write it. When your base, it's a smaller number. But in this case, our base, it's a bigger number. Then we have to apply another technique of logs. Remember, there we can solve it in terms of dividing those log. We're going to have the log of a number divided by the log of a base. Correct? Now, in this case, you will know that 8 we can write it in a form of its prime factor, which is going to be 2 to the 3. Then also our 32, it can be written in a form of a prime factor. Then we can write it as log base 2 to the 5. Then now we have a log where the base and the number are the same. We said it's equal to 1. We can go back there to our notes. We said if the base and the number are equal, then your log is going to be equal to 1. Then now, how do we then solve this one? Remember another power law that we have indicated there, that we can take this exponent and put it in front there. That is what we are going to apply here. We are going to take this 3, put it there, take this 5, multiply it there, then it's going to be 3 log of 2 all over 5 log of 2 plus 1. Then what will happen there? We are going to cancel those logs. Then we're going to have 3 over 5 plus 1. Then you will see what is 3 over 5 plus 1 is going to give you 8 over 5. So that's basically how you solve that. And one thing about these questions is that they said without use of a calculator, they want to see your workings. They want to see your workings. When you arrive at the answer, you can still punch this in a calculator to confirm your answer. Punch log base 32 of 8 plus log 10. And to confirm your answer, if you punch it in a calculator, automatically your answer has to give you 8 over 5. So you punch it in a calculator, you're gonna get 8 over 5 just to confirm your answer. Then that is nice part about this type of questions. You can solve it and also confirm your answer. Then now we move forward to this one. This is logarithms involving equations, and they carry a lot of marks. You can see 6 marks there. Then what do we do here? We say the log base 4 of x plus log base 4 of x minus 6 is equal to. Remember the log of the log base 5 of 25. If you were to punch that in your calculator, you're gonna have log base 5 of 25. Automatically it will give you 2. Then that's where you get your first mark then. Correct? Then from there you now solve. Remember, how do we solve now from the left hand side? Pay attention here. How do we solve from the left hand side? Remember, you have a log of a base 4 and a log of a base 4. The bases are the same. And we have an addition there between the two logs. Let's go back to our notes because this is very important and you need to understand it. Now you can see that from that question, the logarithm of multiplication is expanded. Then we can move from expansion and we go and write it as 1. And you see it's going to be log base a, then we multiply the two numbers, which is x and y. Multiply both those two. Then that's basically what you are going to do when you get here. We are going to write it as log base 4, and we're saying x multiplied by x minus 6 is equal to 2. It's as simple as that. Then what do we do from here? We want to now remove the log. How do we remove the log? We want to remove this log. How do we do it? We take this 4. It will be the base on your right hand side. And from your right hand side, that too, it will be the exponent of 4. So we are going to have x minus 6 is equal to 4 to the 2. Then you expand there. You're going to have x squared minus 6x is equal to 16. Remember, 4 squared is 4 times 4, which is 16. Then when we take this 16, transpose it, we're going to have x squared minus 6x minus 16 is equal to 0. So those are the techniques that you need to apply in order for you to solve this type of questions. So now, let's see if we don't have enough space. So now, how do we now solve this one? Remember, now we have a quadratic equation. We can use quadratic formula. So we're going to have x is equal to minus b plus minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. So x is going to be equal to, or x is going to be equal to. Now we substitute. We have negative 6, 1, negative 16, and 1. So if you were to punch that in your calculator, let's see what we get. Is negative 6 as your b. Then you have another negative 6. Then you have your 1 and negative 16 divided by 1. Then you will see that 1 it will be 8, and the other one it will be negative 2. Correct? So now that's how you can solve your question. Sometimes they will tell you that you need to conclude. If I were to put 2 here at the log, remember we don't have a log of a negative number. We don't have a log of a negative number. If I were to put it there, then it's going to give me error. It means x, it can be negative 2. X, it can be negative 2, but it can only be 8. Because with 8, we have log of a positive number. Now you have to be careful of the conclusions now. Correct. So now we're looking into activity 2. Then we also now look into the logs. Correct? And you can see that they can ask them in different ways. How to get. So now let's look into this one. We are having log of 72 minus 2 all over log of 6. They're saying 2.1.1, write down the following in a single logarithm. Remember, if you have log base a of x minus log base a of y, we can write it as log base a of x over y. That is how we're going to write it in a single form. It means in a single form, we're going to now combine them. We're going to have log of 72 divided by 2. Then it's going to be the log of 36. Leave it there, 1 mark. Then, hence, without using of a calculator, simplify that. We already know that this is the same as log of 36. So we are just going to say log of 36 divided by the log of 6. So we know that 36, we can write it as log of 6 to the 2 all over log of 6. We apply the power rule, power law. Then we're going to have 2 log of 6 all over log of 6. Then basically, you know that this one and this one will cancel out. The answer is going to be 2. Without use of a calculator, that's how you simplify that. It's as simple as A, B, and C. Let's look at the second one now. These are equations that are involving logarithms for 5 marks. We must now think of the exponents because it's very important. Exponents and exponential logs are working together. So here we are having 5 to the power of x plus 2 minus 5 to the power of x is equal to 600. So let's separate these ones. Remember, the rule that I've applied there is to say if you have the same base, multiplication of the same base, you will add the exponents. So already here, the exponents are already added, which is x plus 2. Then I can move from right to left, separation. We separate them. Base of 5 have the power of x, base of 5 has the power of 2. They are multiplying each other. That's how we can solve this type of a problem. Remember, sometimes we have to move forward, sometimes we have to go backward. So now, here we also look at what is common, which is 5 to the power of x. Remember, we have 2 times there. 5 to the power of x multiplied by 5 to the power of 2 minus 5 to the power of x. We have 2 terms there. Then how do we now solve it? I'm going to say 5 to the power of x, we take it out as a common factor. We're going to have 5 squared minus 1. It's not 0, it's 1. Then it's equal to 600. So we're going to have 5 to the power of x. Now, inside there, if you say 5 squared minus 1, you are going to get 24. Then divide both sides by 24. 24 cancel 24. 5 to the power of x is equal to. If you say 600 divided by 24, you are going to get 25. Then you can now apply exponents. Remember, if you have 5 to the power of x is equal to 25, you can write it as a prime factor is 5 to the power of 2. Therefore, if you have the same base, you equate the exponent. X is equal to 2. It is as simple as ABC grade 11s. What you need to know is how to apply the exponents and exponential equations. Correct. Remember, we have to work backwards. Sometimes we work going forward, sometimes we work in reverse. There is nothing wrong with that. You only need to understand the concepts. And this type of questions, they will even be there in grade 12 next year. So you need to know them. Okay, we're looking into now activity number 3. In activity number 3 now they are saying 3.1, if log 5 is equal to m, determine the following in terms of m. Right? Let's start there. Log of 25. Remember, I can write this in the following form. You're going to have log of 5 to the power of 2. That is the prime factor of 25. 5 to the power of 2. 5 to the power of 2. Then we take these 2 and we multiply in front there. We're going to have 2 log of 5. And remember, the question says log of 5 is equal to m. Then it means here we can write it as 2m. That's how we write it in terms of m. Simple, straightforward. 2 marks. 1, 2. We are passing. We are passing. 2 marks, straightforward. Now, let's move forward. We have log of 2. We have log of 2, and remember they said we must write it in terms of m. In this case, we now need to apply our minds. And this one, it can be what we call a level 4 question. Because you need to now think of numbers that they can make up 2. The numbers that can make up 2. So if now we're looking into this, I can say log of 2 can be written as 10 all over 5. 10 over 5 is equal to 2. So do you think now that I think beyond the box, out of the box? So now, if this is the case, I can now expand them because it's a division. I can now do what? Expand them. Then we said, okay, we know that if the base is not given, I will assume that my base is 10. But on the other side, they told me that the log of 5 is m. So I will just write m. Then this one is going to be 1 minus m. We wrote it in terms of m. So the trick here, it was these two numbers. 5 over 10. They make up 2. So these are the things that you need to think about beyond the box. So now that's how you do that. You will have your 1, your 2, and 3. 3 marks in your pocket. 3 marks in your pocket. So let's now look at 3.2. 3.2, we have dealt with it, is the same as the previous one. Here we will group the like terms. It means log have to be with the log. What we'll do here, we'll just transpose this negative log base 2 of negative x minus 4, and then we also transpose this 3 to the other side. So we're going to have to write it as follows. We're going to say log base 2 of x plus 3, then you will have plus log base 2 of x minus 4 is equal to positive 3. Then we take it from there. How do we then work with it? We're going to have log base 2. Remember, addition goes hand in hand with multiplication. Then to remove that log, we explain that this 2, it will be the base, and the base will be the exponent. It means we're going to have x plus 3, x minus 4, it's equal to 2 to the power of 3. Then, when we expand here, we're going to have x squared minus x minus 12 is equal to 8. I just expanded everything. When you multiply here and you multiply here, that's what you are going to get. Minus 4x plus 3x is minus x. So we are going to have x squared minus x, then minus 20. It's equal to 0, because negative 12 and negative 8, when we transpose it, this side is going to be negative 20. Then now, you can also use your quadratic, or we can factorize. If we were to factorize there, let's see. We're going to have x and x. The factors of 20 that can give you 1 is 5 and 4. Then it's going to be negative and positive. So it's going to have x is equal to 5, or x is equal to negative 4. Then we spoke about the negative, to see the log can be a negative number. Correct. If we are to substitute it here, it's going to be log 2 of negative 4 plus 3. Automatically, it's going to be negative 1. Then everything will be undefined there. So that's why we're saying we can't have the log of a negative number. So that's how basically you solve these type of questions. So this is the end of the lesson, and I hope that you have learned a lot during this lesson, and we learn by repetition. You will go and revise the equations and inequalities, and also your logarithms, so that you can prepare for your exams. Thank you.